My name is Francis MacNamara, a native of Cashel in the county Tipperary. Sworn tyranny's foe, and while I've life, I'll crow. The infant Frank MacNamara first began his crowing in 1811, and we don't need to suppose that he was actually born in Cashel. He frequently lied about his origins, particularly to the authorities, and may have merely chosen Tipperary for the rhyme of his name. We don't know anything about his childhood directly, but it's possible to infer that his upbringing was devoutly religious, and that his family possessed the means to provide him with a solid literary education that familiarised him with the works of Jonathan Swift and Robbie Burns, among others. His profession in early life is an open question. We may imagine him as a miner, labourer, sailor, or shepherd, depending on which of his prison records we might care recklessly to extrapolate from. During Frank's teenage years, a long campaign led by Daniel O'Connell finally succeeded in 1829 in winning Irish Catholics the right to vote. But crushing poverty and rebellion persisted. The Tithe War was a desperate struggle waged by impoverished tenant farmers against the compulsory payment of tithes to maintain the Protestant Church in Ireland. Even leaving aside the religious aspect of that, it was a heavy tax, sometimes even exceeding the rent paid for the farm itself. And for Catholics, it came on top of the tithe they already paid to their own clergy. It was not popular. A poem of Frank's, published in Australia years later, a dialogue between two Hibernians in Botany Bay, taken at face value, shows Paddy, a repentant Catholic, deploring the agitation that led to his exile and imprisonment. His friend Darby tells him, "You robbed your poor soul of felicity's joys by joining yourself to the cursed white boys." Paddy confirms this. "Cursed Daniel O'Connell, the great agitator, is in my opinion a double-faced traitor. From his seditious harangues had I kept away, I never should have visited Botany Bay. Tell the boys to desist from killing peelers and arson, but cheerfully pay the tithe proctor and parson. Why should they, Darby, be left in the lurch? You know they're the head of the Protestant Church. To protect them, faith, I'd spill my blood every drop, and not only the tenth, but the half of my crop I'd freely give them without hesitation, to save me from botany and vile transportation." Clearly, the poem is a humorous work, and whatever satisfaction the colonial authorities may have extracted from a literal reading of these lines, any Irish audience it may have had would hardly have failed to see it as anything but satire. The first hard facts of Frank MacNamara's history emerged in January 1832, when the Kilkenny Journal reported on a particularly interesting trial. As we before observed, there was nothing of importance or out of the usual course of petty crime incidental to a large and populous city. Of the 5 persons sentenced to transportation, not one was a native of Kilkenny. They were all strangers and quite unconnected with the neighbourhood. Mary Bagnall, for stealing muslin out of the shop of Mr. Finn of High Street, 7 years transportation. Same sentence on Francis MacNamara, a real Corkonian, for breaking the shop windows of Mr. John MacDonald and stealing therefrom a piece of worsted plaid. The cross-examination of 2 witnesses by this prisoner afforded much amusement to the court. His peculiar accent, cutting remarks, and mode of delivery were both quaint and forcible. "Please, your lordship, as to Mr. Prince, the constable, his oath should not be thought much of against me. He may know the weight of that book in pennyweights and scruples, but of its awful meaning and substance he knows nothing, often as he has kissed it. He should have the eye of a hawk and the diligence of a cat to see me do what he swears. By virtue of your oath, young man," to the shopman, "did you get directions from any persons as to how you were to swear against me?" Answer: "By virtue of my oath, I did not." To the constable he put the same question and received a like answer. "Now, your lordship, I must prove them both perjurer. Did not that decent gentleman," it will be perceived that he meant Mr. John Waters, the clerk of the court, "did not that decent-looking gentleman, sitting under your lordship, in a loud and distinct manner that nobody could mistake, Direct them to swear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. On the verdict of guilty being returned, sentence was immediately passed, and he was ordered from the dock. Prior to his leaving it, he flourished his hand, and in a cheerful and animated countenance, and in a loud voice, said, I dread not the dangers by land or by sea, that I'll meet on my voyage to Botany Bay. My labours are over, my vocation is past, and it is there I'll rest easy, and happy at last. A few months later, on May 10th in the spring of 1832, the Eliza II sailed from Cork carrying 198 convicts, including one brash and overconfident youth, aged 21, 5 feet 5 inches tall, with broad, full features, grey eyes, fresh complexion, and light brown hair, bearing a scar at the outer corner of his right eye. During the voyage, he was issued with religious books and given medicines for constipation. Yes, you're going to learn everything about this man. Every history is recorded. He was also given 24 lashes for bad conduct by one of the ship's officers, James Gordon. This fellow is a sad scamp, and yet far above the common herd in some respects. He has considerable abilities, has written some very palpable lines on his trial and sentence since he came on board, and has a very extensive knowledge of the scriptures. He, it appears, was tried for a very slight offence, but his conduct on his trial was so bad that he was transported for 7 years. He recited a mock heroic poem on his own composing in which he ridiculed judge, jury, and other officers of the court that had tried him. This, of course, enhanced his offence and added to his punishment. Now, I take exception with that comment from James Gordon, because remember, Mary Bagnall got 7 years for stealing cloth as well, so not really sure about that. The voyage to Sydney took a little under 4 months. Push a Derby, my friend. Ain't the sea mighty deep? Rather than be a sailor, I'd enlist for a sweep. For sweeps can repose on their soft sooty pillows, while mariners are tossed up and down on the billows. But if ever I return from cursed New South Wales, I'll tell the old people some wonderful tales, describing the elements and waves in commotion, and the curious animals I've seen in the ocean. How black whales and sperm in droves gathered round us, spouting water on our decks sufficient to drown us. How sharks followed after us like peelers and swaddies, anxiously awaiting to devour the dead bodies. The sharks following Eliza II in 1832 had 2 such meals during the voyage.
I am a native of the land of Erin, and lately banished from that lovely shore. I left behind my aged parents, and I left behind me the girl I adore. In transit storms as I set sailing, like a bold mariner my course did steer. Sydney harbour was my destination, that cursed harbour at length drew near. I then joined banquet in congratulation on my safe arrival from the briny sea. But alas, alas, I was mistaken. 12 years transported to Moreton Bay. Early one morning, as I carelessly wandered by the Brisbane waters, I chanced to stray. I saw a prisoner sadly bewailing, as on the sun-beaming banks he lay. He said, I've been a prisoner at Port Macquarie, at Norfolk Island and Emu Plains, at Castle Hill and Kirstoon-Gabby, at all these places I've worked in chains. But of all the places of condemnation, in each penal station of New South Wales. Moreton Bay I have found no equal, excessive tyranny each day prevails. Early in the morning as the day is dawning, to trace from heaven the morning dew, up we are started at a moment's warning, our dismal slavery for to renew. Our overseers and superintendents, all these cursed tyrants' language we must obey, or else at the triangles our flesh is mangled. That is our wages at Moreton Bay. For 3 long years I was beastly treated, heavy irons each day I wore. My poor back with flogging has been lacerated, and oft times painted with crimson gore. Like the Egyptians and ancient Hebrews, we were sorely oppressed by Logan's yoke, till kind Providence came to our assistance and gave this tyrant his mortal stroke. Yes, he was hurried from that place of bondage where he thought he would gain renown. But a native black who lay in ambush did give this tyrant his fatal wound. Now that I've got once more to cross the ocean and leave this place called Moreton Bay, where many a man from downright starvation lies mouldering now beneath the clay. Fellow prisoners, be exhilarated, and your former sufferings don't bear in mind, for it's when from bondage we are extricated we will leave those tyrants far, far behind.
That ballad is called The Convict's Arrival, and relates how the tyranny of a debased torturer named Patrick Logan was brought to an end by Murray warriors in 1830. That was 2 years before Frank arrived in the colony, but the story would have been told to him, no doubt with considerable relish, by his fellow prisoners.